Welcome to Conversations That Heal. It's Keri Daye and Kate Bartley, and we're talking all things trauma, healing, and women's health. I would just like to say also our main goal here is looking at how trauma plays out in the body, normalizing it and healing. Although Kate and I have some differences in our niches, we both typically feel the source of our pain and how we heal are often very similar. It's having an empathetic witness, getting the support and healing that counts. So before we start today's conversation, I would just like to quickly recap and add to our last conversation, which was about trauma being a result of an overwhelming sense of danger, powerlessness, and fear. And that healing is a result of feeling safe, empowered, and supported. We mentioned how the same trauma can affect two people differently, and both agree that it depends so much on what foundation we had to start in life with. And it is less about what happened to us and more about who is there to support us before, during, and after that overwhelming experience. Mm-hmm. And that little t trauma, such as bullying, is not such a little thing because so many commit suicide over this. So just want to point that out. Loss of a pet, a significant relationship, or emotional abuse are a few of the main ones and are very difficult to go through. Let's just jump into today's super important conversation that's so dear to our heart, and it's on secure attachment. Kate, what would you like to share about some characteristics of secure attachment?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I just want to say how powerful that first statement was, just clarifying what trauma is and what healing looks like. That was a powerful picture.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, when I think about secure attachment, as I was reflecting on this, I'm reminded of how grateful I am for the work and where I am today versus a lot of the insecurity that I was feeling earlier in life in different stages. But I think what I see in my own life and others is this ability to feel safe and close to people, even when they're far away. That's been a huge change in my life.
Yeah,
I've got kids living overseas and going off and places like Iraq and different things. And there's this newfound safe and feeling so close to them, even though they're miles apart. And I think that's a sign of secure attachment.
Yeah.
Being able to seek comfort and ask for help and support when we're scared, I think is important. Being able to identify our own emotions, being able to self-regulate, feeling comfortable sharing our feelings with other people.
Yeah.
One of the big ones I also thought of was just having this supportive inner caring voice. Like instead of an inner critic, we have this supportive inner caring voice, having a strong self-esteem, where we feel like we matter and we're known.
Yeah.
And the other big one that stands out for me is interdependency. I know for me and many of my clients, we might have grown up very self-reliant and independent. And so that's where it can be very difficult to bring in the support that we need. And so this getting back to this place of interdependence, I think, is a sign of secure attachment.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Some characteristics in children are also for children, right? Signs of being security attachment are emotional regulation, distress tolerance, impulse control, mental flexibility, confidence in and capacity to repair, and empathy. So those are all signs as children that show those things, right?
Yeah, and those ring true for us as adults, I think, as well. Along the lines of empathy, when I was thinking on that, I think it's more of an even expanded ability to empathize, to be emotionally available, but from a more less maladaptive place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Anything else you want to add to that?
No, the only other thing that comes to mind, I think, is just, and as we talk about this model that Jesus showed, that just where we're able to set healthy boundaries, we're able to step back, we can be separate, but still belong. We can pull back and we can also be emotionally available. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really good. So when we didn't get secure attachment, it means co-regulation didn't exist, really. And it affects our health, relationships, and our lives tremendously. So what would you like to share with that how it affects not having it.
Yeah, if it's
Please.
okay for a minute, I wanted to share something because I think this is a really
Sure.
powerful imagery of what secure attachment is and isn't, or doesn't look like. This morning I was walking with my husband, and as we were walking, I started to like sway, like I was weaving in the road, and he said to me, "Kate, like, what's wrong with you? Why can't you walk straight?" And I said, I think I was just weaving over to you because I saw you pull over to let the dogs sniff the ground. And so my body just weaved to follow him like magnetically. And he said something to the extent of, well, you need to like stay the course and, you know, your magnetic pole needs to flip or something. I'm like, okay, well, that is one of the byproducts, I think, for me of insecure attachment earlier in my life, where
Yeah,
I'm drawn to other people to find my bearings and to have my course, right? Like it's hard for me to stay directed on my own goals and my own
yeah,
path. And
yeah.
so coming back into a ability to keep going in self-leadership is a sign of secure attachment for me versus the
Yeah.
woo. So I thought that
That's
was
good, because then you just observe that, right? So that's,
yeah.
yeah.
So go back to your question now. I'm sorry.
No worries. Good. Thanks for sharing.
Mm. What else? The other thing that I thought of is just this model of what I'm seeing in my, so I have my first grandbaby was born about a year ago. She's 1 now. As I watched my daughter and her and that interaction, and now that I know so much more about attunement and attachment and what that's supposed to look like, and even as a pediatric physical therapist, you know, I saw the power of attunement and attachment and what it looked like when they didn't have that in place, you know, and the clinging and the difference in the fear and the uncertainty. But to watch that unfold between my daughter and my granddaughter, and seeing that when we feel securely attached, we can cry and reach out and express our need and ask for,
Right.
you know, without any shame, right? Like it's just, I need you, right? And to be held and
Yeah.
supported and secured in that, and to be able to relax, and then to feel so safe in that we can go off and play and explore without worry about what anyone's thinking
Right.
of us or anything, right? And I thought that's a beautiful example of what it's supposed to look like. And then over time, we start to lose that sense of security sometimes, and start to create some maladaptive survival strategies. Yeah.
So true. So true. I know, like as for and a child, an unpredictable caregiver, because you're speaking about how, how it is, how it
Mhm.
should be. But when you don't have that and there's an unpredictable caregiver, it's traumatic for the nervous system. And if someone is, say, one day they're relaxed or chilled, but then other times they're going off the rails, it's even worse for the child. Having that
Mhm.
inconsistency really affects
Yeah.
one.
And
Um,
don't you think it's this matter of knowing that a loving, like we were talking about having a witness, right? Like that loving presence is there with us, orienting toward us, responding to our emotional cues. And that's the environment which this secure attachment we're talking about is fostered, right? And
yeah,
you know, recognizing that this isn't about you know, blame or anything. It's just recognizing that a lot of parents, even us possibly as parents,
yeah,
you know, if we're struggling with our own mental health things and we're working on things that we're, you know, are trying to come back into secure attachment ourselves, and or
yeah,
there's stressful life circumstances, a lot of times the children are left without that presence, without that loving witness, somebody responding to their cues. And it's so important for development and our health.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I mean, there is no shame here. It's not about judging and blaming. That's super important. I like to bring that up.
Mhm.
And it's such a intergenerational trauma that it just keeps getting passed down. And so it's so important for, someone to take that role of breaking that pattern that's been going on for generations. And so, recognizing and really working through it makes a huge difference in the families and generations to come. It's a very huge role if someone's doing it. It's beautiful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm.
So and when they're not available and are unpredictable or dangerous, what happens is we self-regulate, right? Which is the opposite. We're supposed to co-regulate first and then from there we build capacity to self-regulate. So when it happens in the wrong order, we do it out of survival. because we're just children and we don't know the right way, right? We haven't learned that yet. And that's where self-soothing comes in and addictions come in. So that's another whole ball game, and which is very sad. So many people in society are dealing with that, right? Because they didn't have a secure attachment. So
Would you say that a form of self-regulation would be, this is a pattern I saw in my own, for myself, and I see in many of my clients, is that in order to try to gain secure attachment or attachment, we begin to use patterns of overgiving or people pleasing or things like that to try to get our attachment needs met, right? And that is a form of self-regulation, yes, like
absolutely.
and then and that's why we see, I think, when we're not in a place of service, we're not in a place of, dare I say, power, right? We find ourselves in a health crisis or somewhere we're all of a sudden on the receiving end and in a vulnerable position. All that old attachment stuff comes up. That insecurity goes up like crazy, and because we don't have access to our survival strategies anymore. Right?
Yeah,
And
it's
now I have a
huge.
threat. I don't have the attachment. I don't have the love and connection I need to navigate this uncertainty.
For sure. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Because as I was going to say is, we don't all go into addictions that way of self-soothing, but there is other forms that we cope in, and spending our life trying to prove our worth, worthy enough, being too nice to everybody, like you said, by never saying how you feel because they may not like how you feel, not expressing healthy anger when someone's crossing your boundaries, or working too hard to prove you're worthwhile and taking on too much and stressing yourself out.
Yeah.
Those are all patterns that we do automatically.
And you mentioned, some of the other things that happen when we don't have secure attachment. I thought of this the other day just because of the number of interviews I've done this week with women that have gone through medical trauma is that these, like I said, these patterns or that insecurity is triggered in times of stress, like anytime we're making a career change or a life transition or children are leaving the home or something that creates uncertainty, a medical experience, right? Something that creates uncertainty, all of a sudden that old insecurity will rise up in us. And all of a sudden we find ourselves feeling very vulnerable, very lost, very unanchored, right? Not grounded, like anxiety is just starting to go through the roof, right? And I think it is, it's that we don't understand the power of attachment and how important it is. And that, so our bodies just have this high alert going, Mayday, Mayday, right? You're not securely attached right now, right? And so I think that's where panic attacks come in and anxiety and all of those things. There was something that I read in a book today. Let me see if I can find the quote here. In Hold On to Your Kids by Dr. Gabor Mate. He says, it's the most powerful force in the universe and how much we take it for granted. It reminded me of the scripture, 1 Corinthians, or is it Corinthians 1:17, that says, in him all things hold together. And I thought that's what we're talking about here, that this power of this force of attachment, this force of groundedness, of security, of it's that power of love and connection, right? That's what holds us together, what anchors us in security.
It's so true. The hyper independent, self-reliant, carrying the weight of the world, developing habits, like you said, worry, anxiety, fawning, people pleasing, becoming very empathetic. And then a big one is abandoning ourselves. We do this and it's huge. But that's a big one. One of the positives is being really good at hearing and responding to others. But it tends to be the pattern is that's what we do, and then we forget ourselves.
Right.
Like we both were listening to Dr. Russell Kennedy, which is the medical anxiety MD, and a friend of mine. And, he talked about how, all those things play out, right? And that it's a splitting of ourselves. And we need to learn to come back and love ourselves, give ourselves that attention. And that's one of the biggest ways that we can heal. So it's.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking when you were saying that. I think that's the first step for our healing journey, whether we're struggling with a physical illness or trying to get over medical trauma or relational trauma or whatever's going on. I really think that's the first step, is if we know that what we need for secure attachment is a loving witness and attunement, right? To feel seen, heard, and understood, to
Yeah,
feel important, like we matter, we can give that gift to ourselves.
yeah,
We can
yeah,
turn inward and begin to go, oh, wow, I see you. You're hurting. What's going
yeah,
on?
yeah,
I feel it, and to go into the felt sense in our body, even there, like there's a sense of alarm in you, isn't there? Like, just beginning to tap
yeah,
into that and turning inward to bring the safety and the comfort to ourselves that we need.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. We'll go into all that healing part.
Oh,
In the end, I think it's probably going to be, I think we're going to be ended up wrapping up pretty quick, but in the next episode, we can do the whole healing. Does that sound good?
yeah.
And talk about that even further in more depth.
Mhm.
Another point that I even thought about too was like in a case of narcissistic abuse, before you label yourself as having insecure attachment, we need to consider whether it's a certain person that's making us feel insecure. And so, it kind of is a guide, but it doesn't always mean it's, black and white. There's areas where we really need to look at, the differences. We can feel very secure in certain situations with certain people, and then
Mhm.
feel, what's the other term is, be
Insecure.
anxious as well
Anxious,
as
yeah,
that.
anxious. Mhm.
uh,
Yeah, I was just saying what you said.
just the different types of attachment
Mhm.
with other people at different times, right? So
Yeah.
it's good to be aware of that, not just kind of feel that you're all one all the
Yeah,
time.
do you think that's, for me, I still feel like that's a sign that there's that's hard for us, like, if we're in a context where we have a boss or a spouse or somebody that's bringing up that insecurity, and we can't feel the safety and the trust in that relationship, and um, absolutely noticing which environments are healthy and healing and which contexts are kind of toxic for us, that create greater stress, that make us difficult, for
Yeah,
us to be grounded and confident, right? I think there's always a red flag there, going knowing that likely started way before that person. But if we're going to be healing, we got to find healthy context, right? We've got to find those healthy supportive spaces. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Um, yeah, and the other thing is, when we didn't get it, um, you're trying to fix what you didn't get, right? And so then we end
Mhm.
up connecting with more unavailable people, and just prolonging, and it's just a cycle that continues and continues. Um, yeah, it's
Mm.
kind of fascinating how that works, but we're trying to fix what we didn't get, or we're going to the wrong people, and it doesn't work.
Yeah. I think we had that conversation last time we talked, how I just was like this light bulb moment. Oh my gosh, Kate, are you attracted to emotionally unavailable women? What in the world is going on here?
Oh, we'll have to
Not
talk
like
about
as
that
in,
more.
attracted, but like drawn to try to connect relationally, because that's what my nervous system was used to.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. It's kind of crazy when you think about it, right? There's these
Mhm.
paradigms that happen. So,
Mhm.
anything else you'd like to add to that?
Um, I don't think so, other than, just I think the common experience that you already mentioned was, um, when we find ourselves in those places where we've tried to express, right? Or we've tried to be vulnerable and open and connect, and we're met with something that we perceive as rejection or disinterest or not curious about getting to know us or whatever, how that shame or that vulnerability can rise up, and so we'll pull back, right? And then we'll go right back into our old patterns of connecting through a maladaptive way. And so
Hmm.
we get stuck in this vicious cycle of not finding those safe mutual relationships that we're longing for, because we get in these patterns of protection to avoid the hurt, right?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. For
Mhm.
sure. Um, was a point here I was going to make as well. That the anxiety that's coming up is really about trusting love, right?
Absolutely.
And about blocking love to ourselves. I'd love to do a conversation with you on just that alone,
That's a
anxiety.
really good conversation.
Yes, Yeah,
Yes.
I noted that down this morning. We'll have to expand on that more, but that's typically what's going on there. Um, Love that we didn't give to ourselves. So when we didn't have that secure attachment, we have this split in our adult years that causes the anxiety and the alarm, as
Mhm.
Russ says. And we didn't need to, we need to give it to ourselves. So it's the
Mm.
whole process of learning. And I think, he even states that he's still working on that, Dr. Russell, as well as you and I. So it's a
Right.
lifelong journey, right? It doesn't
Mhm.
just fix itself really quickly. So
Mhm.
yeah, just
Another
have to.
great resource, Dr. Alison Cook talks a lot about this too in her experience with people pleasing and as an empath as well. And
Nice.
that's very similar insights and understandings there. Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. Um, then there was another thing, an expert I love, Dr. Ingrid, shared on an Instagram post lately saying, here's the thing that I'm starting to comprehend. I have a flight response. It is doing, because it gives this false sense of control. There's a
Mhm.
beginning, a middle, and an end. And oh, how I love that feeling.
Mm.
But having a son, oh man, is kicking my butt. And it's bringing up lots of stuff. And I just loved that reel that she did because, first of all, I could relate to all of it, and dealing with all the things myself because I also was that type of person with that response of doing, like we could take up on these big projects or, you know, career changes or move and just do all these big things on our own. But then when it comes to certain relationships, we get triggered in somehow in that attachment area.
Mhm.
And if there's a feeling of any in safety, that's what she's talking about. It's just kicking her
Yeah.
butt. So
When you say that, that reminds me of, again, all this comes back to what you said at the beginning. I think that's anxiety comes up in the midst of uncertainty. And so we'll try to do something to bring in certainty and
yeah,
control to mask the anxiety or to get to get that to go away. When
yeah,
all the while anxiety is just a secondary emotion. We're not even getting to the vulnerability of what's real and what's underneath there. Yeah.
yes. And we get caught up in it, and we're kind of like you said, dysregulated all over the place and trying to figure out and fix it. And a lot of times it just makes it worse. And so where you just have to really come back to awareness and go, what's going on here?
Mhm.
And work with yourself and bring yourself through that, regardless of how the other person,
Right.
plays out with you or interacts or doesn't. So,
Mhm.
but very difficult stuff. So,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
So,
Mm.
yeah. Anything else that you would like to share on
Mm.
that part, or should we?
Yeah, let's just, I guess, did you say you wanted to land onto some healing thoughts at the end? Like what?
Yeah. So I don't know where we're at for time, but I thought maybe we might even do that as a separate
Okay.
conversation and just do the healing part on its own. What do you think?
Sure.
Where are we at for
Yeah.
time?
Why don't we just finish with I'd love to finish just with reading this. I
Okay,
think it's
sure.
beautiful just mentioning Dr. Cook here.
Mhm.
I think sometimes when we're going through this stuff, especially women that have a strong faith, when we find ourselves in this place of uncertainty, we find ourselves in insecurity, we can start to judge ourselves. What's wrong with me? I should have this figured out. I shouldn't feel anxious. And I love this quote. She says, if you struggle to feel God's love, to experience what it's like to be held by the God of the universe who loves you, who knit you together, and who is present to you every moment of every day, the God who is a breath away, I want you to hear me say, it's not your fault. We are a
Mm,
whole body people, and our whole bodies are affected by attachment wounds. We can't will ourselves to experience to that experience of loving presence. Our bodies have to experience safety to heal.
that's so good.
I just thought that was powerful.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you. That's really good.
Mhm.
So true, right?
Yeah. And just, I guess, maybe just even holding on the hope as we step into the next conversation. Next time that number one, what you said was that it is contextual. So sometimes we're experiencing a secure attachment in one relationship and not so much in another, or different seasons of life, we might move in and out of this, but also that we can heal and that we can move towards healthier
Mhm.
attachment relationships, even if we didn't have our needs met in the way that they needed to be.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, and develop that stronger sense of self, so that I'm walking up that hill without swaying, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I
Yes.
think this is foundational to our health. I think it's the main thing. Like we're going everywhere trying to fix our health without an understanding how important this is. So
Yeah.
thank you for the
Yeah.
conversation.
And ignoring it.
Yeah.
You know, and then there's a lot of society is self-diagnosing and labeling ourselves, which another conversation down the road. But just recognizing, you know, this is not good at all, and it's not helping. It's a guide, but and to have awareness, but so many people, you know, are like I said, self-diagnosing with whether it's you know, ADHD or depression or just all kinds of things, right? Bipolar, and a lot of it is trauma and really related to attachment as well. So it's really kind of digging in deep and um, looking at it further. You know, we need to recognize, you know, why, not why the depression or why the anxiety or the addiction, but why the pain.
Yeah.
Why the pain? That's you know, that's big for me, for everybody, you know.
And along that topic, what would you say how does that relate? Like the underneath every pain, what do you think there is?
There's, well, you know, we were talking about it, a mixture, like it's trauma, attachment,
Yeah,
injury.
like the lack of that love and safety, right? Like
Yes.
that's underlying all distress and
Yeah.
ease and everything.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. So I just think that that's such an awareness that people should have and bring up and talk about more, because I don't really hear a lot of that. It's a lot of, you know, this, that, and the other, judging or whatever it is, diagnosing without actually stepping back and go, well, why is the pain there? Like, it's not, the problem isn't the anxiety or the addiction. What's going on underneath it, right? So.
Right. Yeah. And it makes me sad because the very thing that we're longing for is certainty, to get out of uncertainty. But yet we find ourselves running around all over trying to find the answers to fix and solve. And whether it's our health problems, our relational problems, and we're running around trying to make things better when the real root of it is this trauma and this insecure attachment that's going on, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Having such compassion and time and patience to give it the attention it needs. So I think we're going to be having a lot more of these conversations on our health, relationships, anxiety, intergenerational traumas, medical traumas, betrayal traumas, narcissistic abuse, and many others. So, so be sure to follow along. And if there's any other topics you'd love to have us discuss, then drop it in the comments. Be sure to follow along. Yeah, so I think that's probably it for today. You can find Kate, where can they find you?
My website is She Walks in Wellness. And you can also follow me on Instagram, katebartley.soulcarecoach, or Facebook. I think you can just look me up under Kate Bartley.
Wonderful. Yeah, and the same for
How about
me.
you, Keri?
Yeah. The same for me would be Keri Daye Coaching on Facebook and Instagram, and KeriDayeCoaching.com for my website too. So catch the next one. We're going to be talking about healing here on the secure attachment right after this. And so we'll see you all there. Bye for now.
Okay, thanks.